Hello, class. It's Miss Roberts here, and today we're going to talk about relating to others in groups. Let's begin. All right. So, per usual, I will be moving my screen around just to make sure that we're able to see. But today we're going to explore relating to others in groups and norms. Okay. So, with norms, there are roles, and we're going to also explore the roles that we're going to take in groups. So, with roles, we're going to explore the concept of self concept. So, who you think you are and how you define yourself. And some of those definitions of yourself can bleed into the roles that within a group that you find yourself drawn to and that you excel in. So, roles are sets of expectations that are also used to reduce uncertainty in groups. So, think about your strengths as an individual because, like we said earlier in the semester, one of the strengths of small group communication and small groups and projects is that you can combine all the best elements of individuals towards one goal. So, depending on what those are, you might excel at one or a couple of roles in a group. All right. So, diversities and roles in small groups. There are there are groups of tasks that are categorized as the following. We have task roles. So these roles are aimed at accomplishing a goal. Maintenance goals. So this is the social atmosphere, conflict resolution, because it's one thing to be able to complete the task, but are we having a good time and are we enjoying each other's company while we do so? Because yes, can a group that doesn't get along complete the task? Of course. And of course, we want to be cordial, but it might not be an enjoyable experience. And we want enjoyable experience in our team goals. And then there are individual roles. They're aimed at accomplishing personal goals, and you have to balance that out because we might want the recognition of being a leader or being associated with a certain team or group. But we have to make sure that we balance out our individual roles and individual goals with those of the team. All right. So with task roles, we have the following: the initiator or contributor. So this is the person who loves to brainstorm and bring new ideas and problem solving. But of course, everyone in the group should be bringing ideas forth as well. Then we have the elaborator. So with the initiator contributor, they're really good at creating examples and finding resources for the group. And then the coordinator tries to clarify ideas. So this, of course, doesn't have to be just one person. These are the roles that we can take within projects. And then we have the orienter, the person who summarizes the group's actions and keeps the group focused. We can also think about the previous section where we talked about agenda setting and the meeting minutes. So being able to summarize what happened in the meetings and the goings on is really important, especially when doing that recap for the minutes. All right. So we have group building and maintenance goals. So we have the encourager who offers praise, understanding, and acceptance of ideas. But then the gatekeeper encourages less talkative members to speak and limits to talkative members. When you think of the role of the chairperson in a group meeting, they can often play these roles. I know as an instructor, I do something that's similar in a classroom. So we want to make sure that in our group, in our small group rather, that we encourage others to share ideas. That could be both verbally and non-verbally. So for example, nonverbal communication and writing down ideas on the paper, anonymous voting, or anonymous suggestions, what have you. Whatever, however your group members decide to collaborate on ideas, the encourager can do that. But we also want to balance out people who might talk too much, and it's okay. It's okay if we have enthusiastic members, but we want to make sure that everyone in the group, especially group meetings, have time to talk because there's limited time to put everything out there. So, encourager offers praise and understanding, acceptance of ideas, and gatekeeper balances out the two talkative members to the less talkative ones. So let's talk about norms. At the beginning of the semester, one of the first assignments I had to do was to develop your own rules and your own norms. There were two reasons I wanted you to do this. Through the syllabus, you have my own rules. You have the guidelines and standards for the class and expectations for the projects. But with each group, I wanted you guys to have a sense of camaraderie and sort of like a code of ethics within your own group. Because it's one thing for me to say, okay, communicate with your teammates, make sure you're putting your assignments on time, make sure that you're contributing equally. But it's another if that's a pact that you made within your own group. So the group norms and the ground rules come from me as far as the entirety of the class, but each group has their own dynamic, and I wanted to have that assignment to acknowledge that and reinforce that. So the norms are the rules and the standards that determine appropriate behaviors in a group, and people develop norms in new groups based on previous groups they belong to. So, for example, in small group communication, with the additional knowledge from the text and our discussions and our conversations in the videos, you'll be armed with knowledge about how groups should be run, the pros and the cons of groups just by taking this course. But you also have your previous experience with groups, good, bad, and the ugly, which we talked about in our discussions. So hopefully with this experience and the knowledge that you gain from this class, that you're able to have a good experience when doing the group projects. But then we have ground rules. Going back to the group contracts that I had you guys do earlier, I wanted you guys to have explicit, agreed upon prescriptions for acceptable behavior in your group because I know what I want for you as a class and as an individual in this experience. But what does your group want? Okay, so let me go ahead and scroll myself down. Sorry about that. So behind me says dynamics. But then there's also status differences that can happen in small group dynamics, especially when we're thinking about a work situation, excuse me, a work situation and additional situations where there's hierarchy. So first we have a status. So that's when an individual's level of importance. So this can be based on role, level of respect, seniority in organization, what have you. And people want to be seen and talk to people of higher status. But status and power can be gained in different ways. So here are the power bases that people can have within a group. First is legitimate power, being elected, appointed, or selected. And if you think about our class as a small group, as the instructor, I have the legitimate power because I was appointed to be your instructor. Think about the bosses, or maybe you are the supervisor and the boss, and it is your job to lead and organize your group or team outside of the class context. So, legitimate power is powers given to those who are elected, appointed, or selected to do so. But then there's referent power, interpersonal attraction, charisma. People are drawn to more outgoing people, and because of that, they gain the power of likability. But then you have expert power. So, in some instances, I share the expert power because of being an instructor of communication studies, but I would not have expert power if we were talking about calculus. Not at all. So, expert power is conditional based on what type of knowledge and information you have, how many years you studied, titles such as doctor, and research experience. So if you have that knowledge of information and you focus on that information, you have that expert power. Then you have reward power. Reward and coercive power, I want to put those as two sides of the same coin. You have the ability to reward behaviors and to punish behaviors. So think about parents. They have the ability to reward us if we get good grades, but ground us if we didn't clean up our rooms. That's power. So here, those are the ways that people can gain power within group dynamics. Okay. So the effects of the power on the group process. So if there's too many people trying to gain power and be top dog, it might slow down the progress of the group's goals because instead of focusing on working together and using our strengths for our group's goals, it's about, hey, I'm the leader. Hey, I'm the top dog. Hey, look at me type of situation. So you don't want to have that struggle for power. Groups with little power talk less. So if there's just one person leading anyway, it may discourage other people from putting their ideas forward, especially if there's a coercive reward power within those dynamics. Persons talk who are more dominant. There's nothing wrong with being dominant. Not saying that. But just like we talked about in the roles where we have to gatekeep who's talking, who's not, just to make sure everybody has a fair chance and a fair shake to express themselves. If you know that you're outgoing and you notice other people in your team may not be, just pull back for a moment and give them a chance to talk. And then make sure to take the leadership role, and also allow others to step up and do the same. Because just on a side note, you don't want to get too burned out and feeling like you're always doing the work either. So let your team be a team and help you. Loss of power, excuse me, power can be lost if it's used for personal gain. So remember, this is a team effort, and you can also take these principles to, say, your job, and just making sure that you are being a team player with the task and with the job versus trying to gain power within it. And too much power leads to autocratic decision making. We don't want to have a top down decision making process, especially in this class because it's about you collaborating on certain projects such as a paper and such as videos. So one person should not be making all the decisions. And plus, the requirement, at least one of my requirements for the class for the grade, is for everyone to contribute equally. All right. So the effects of power in the group process, excuse me, participation, sometimes with participation or participating can help us increase knowledge and solve problems, and being able to make suggestions and take responsibility for tasks, having that balance of, okay, we might have leaders in the group, but make sure that we have shared responsibilities and making sure that power doesn't mean silencing other people. All right. So with group dynamics, there's also a question of trust and camaraderie. One of the reasons why I have you hang out and develop group goals as part of your first projects is to help build that bonding process and say, hey, yes, we have individual goals, but as a team, we want to achieve this at the end of the semester. So, with the completion of tasks and responsibilities and communication, not only will your group members trust you, but you can also model the behaviors that you want to see. And then the trust is the extent to a person where they're confident that you can perform your duties and help out with the group. And group members establish trusting relationships based on mutual respect. So as long as you keep those there, you should be fine. All right. Then we have face to face and virtual teams. Many of us, excuse me, within this class, you have the option of doing activities face to face, but many of us may opt to do these virtually, which is fine. But having that communication, that multi-layered communication outside of just emails and texts are crucial. So face-to-face teams develop trust based on social and emotional bonds. And then, excuse me, and then you're able to develop trust when the context is competitive, just making sure that, hey, especially for a career based team, making sure that we're balancing leadership, competition, balancing all those things. And then with the virtual trains, sharing time information is important because you don't have a lot of chances to communicate and talk with one another. So making sure that things are on time, making sure that we use electronic communication just to compensate for not having face-to-face time is very important. All right. Then we have just a little bit of intercultural communication here. We have cultural variables as well that could impact communication patterns. So there's a concept versus high context and low context cultures, where if we understand how each type of culture communicates, we'll be better off and we won't have a lot of miscommunication. So, for example, there are high context cultures and low context cultures. In the US, we are more of a low context culture, meaning we emphasize verbal messages, very direct messages. So this is usually in Western countries such as the US, Canada, the UK, Australia. And then we have high context cultures, which are primarily found like in Latin America, Asian cultures, African cultures, where there's emphasis on nonverbal communication and decoding nonverbal communication and nonverbal cues is really important. So, with those dynamics, sometimes high context speakers might perceive low context speakers as less credible and trustworthy. Because when you think about it, in these high context cultures, they're more collectivistic in general. So, group dynamics are very important. Keeping the peace is very important. So, if you have someone with the low context culture and that type of speaking pattern come in and be direct, it might be seen as rude. But on the flip side, with low context cultures, not understanding the nuance of high context cultures, using the direct communication or encountering people with lack of direct communication can be a little bit frustrating. So, understanding these dynamics might help us understand each other better, especially when we're trying to balance the nuances of high context and low context cultures. Then we have cultures and time. So in the US, we are more of a monochronic culture where individuals do one thing at a time and we have a scheduled adherence, excuse me, a serious adherence to strict times and deadlines and schedules. Excuse me, with polychronic cultures, there might be more multitasking. It might be more multitasking. Relationships are more important than producing volumes of work. Plans change frequently. They might not have a set time, so punctuality might not be important. So, say if you are dealing with someone of different cultures that are from monochronic versus polychronic time, just understanding where they're coming from and coming to an understanding about how the team's times works and some of those ground rules can help you find a happy medium between monochronic and polychronic characteristics. Ooh, my apologies. Finally, group uses of time. So, as a group, you guys get to set the timelines, and of course, I have deadlines, overarching deadlines, because of course, our course has to end sometime and I have to turn in grades. But I try to space them out as best as I can, and it definitely depends on if we're a full term, shorter term, or fast track type of course. So that will affect the timelines that I'm able to give you, but try to space them enough so once everybody's working together, you guys can pull it off. So we have flexible uses of time. So that's when groups set fewer deadlines and provide groups more autonomy. So with more autonomy, then separation when we separate oneself when completing a group task. So of course you have our individual tasks, then we bring it together. And then concurrency is the attempt to multitask. If you have any questions about how each other manages time and need additional support, let me know. But as long as everybody's able to meet their deadlines, communicate if you're not, so communicate with your team and with myself. Don't just sit and worry in the last minute. We want to make sure that all the projects are done in a timely manner. All right. So that's it for that chapter. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. It is obviously nighttime where I'm at, but if it's the daytime, have an awesome day. And if you're watching me at night, have a good night. Thank you so much. Bye.